The mansion stood on the hill like a giant made of stone and glass. It had 100 rooms, golden doorknobs, and chandeliers that sparkled like frozen stars. But inside, it was the coldest place in the world. Not cold like winter. Cold like a place where nobody smiled anymore. Mr. Richard Sterling owned everything his eyes could see. He had more money than he could count, more cars than he could drive, and more rooms than he could ever sleep in. But he had forgotten something important. He had forgotten how to love. Every morning, Mr. Sterling walked through his mansion with hard shoes that clicked on the marble floors. Click, click, click. The sound echoed through the empty halls like a lonely heartbeat. Servants moved like shadows, cleaning and polishing, but never speaking, never laughing. They were afraid of him. "Don't bother me," he would say without looking at them. "Just do your work." And they did, but they never stayed long. One by one, they would quit and leave, unable to bear the sadness that hung in the air like thick fog. High up on the 3rd floor, in a room with purple curtains and a view of the garden, lived someone everyone had forgotten. Her name was Catherine Sterling. She was Mr. Sterling's wife. Catherine sat in a wheelchair by the window every single day. Her legs didn't work anymore. They hadn't worked for 2 years, ever since the accident. The car crash that changed everything. The crash that took away her ability to walk, but took away something even worse. It took away her husband's heart. Mr. Sterling blamed himself for the accident. He had been driving too fast, talking on his phone about business deals and money. He wasn't paying attention when the truck came around the corner. The crash happened in seconds, but it broke their life forever. After that terrible day, Mr. Sterling couldn't look at his wife without feeling a heavy stone in his chest. So he stopped looking. He stopped visiting her room. He stopped talking to her. He told himself he was too busy, that his business needed him, that she was being taken care of by servants. But Catherine knew the truth. Her husband was running away from her, and that hurt more than her broken legs ever could. She sat by that window, watching birds fly free in the sky, tears rolling down her cheeks that nobody ever saw. The servants would bring her food, help her to the bathroom, and leave. They never asked how she felt. They never held her hand. They just did their jobs and disappeared like ghosts. Catherine felt invisible, like she had disappeared the day her legs stopped working. One servant would come, put the food tray down without a word, and leave. Another would help her into bed at night, then turn off the lights and close the door. In the darkness, Catherine would cry herself to sleep, wondering if anyone in the world still cared that she was alive. "Maybe I'm already a ghost," she whispered to herself one night. "Maybe I died in that crash and nobody told me." The mansion had 16 servants, but none of them had kind eyes. They were efficient, fast, and silent, just the way Mr. Sterling wanted them, until Grace arrived. It was a rainy Tuesday morning when Grace walked up the long driveway to the mansion. She was carrying a small brown suitcase that had seen better days, wearing a simple black dress, and her shoes had holes in them. The rain soaked through, but she kept walking with her head held high. Grace needed this job desperately. Her mother was sick back home, and her little brother needed school fees. She had heard that Mr. Sterling paid well, even though his servants never stayed long. She didn't care about the warnings other people gave her. "That house is cursed," her neighbor had said. "Nobody lasts more than 3 months there." "I'll last," Grace had replied. "I need to." The head servant, a thin woman named Mrs. Winters with a face like sour milk, opened the door and looked Grace up and down with cold eyes. "You're late," Mrs. Winters said, even though Grace was exactly on time. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The bus." "I don't want excuses. I want work. Can you work?" "Yes, ma'am. I can work very hard." Mrs. Winters sighed like Grace was already a problem. "Fine. Your job is cleaning the 3rd floor, the West Wing. Don't bother Mr. Sterling. Don't ask questions. Don't make noise. And whatever you do, don't spend time chatting with Mrs. Sterling. She needs care, not friendship." "Understood." Grace nodded, but inside, her heart felt heavy. Don't spend time chatting? She needs care, not friendship? What kind of place was this? Mrs. Winters showed Grace to the 3rd floor and pointed at a long hallway. "Start here." Mrs. Sterling's room is at the end. Take her breakfast at 8, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. Help her when she needs a bathroom. That's all. Nothing more. Then Mrs. Winters walked away, her shoes clicking like small hammers on the floor. Grace stood alone in the hallway, holding a mop and bucket. She looked toward the door at the end of the hall, Mrs. Sterling's room. Behind that door was a woman nobody talked about. A woman everyone had forgotten. But Grace had a gift. She noticed things other people missed. And she had a heart that refused to look away from pain. The next morning, Grace prepared Mrs. Sterling's breakfast with special care. She made the eggs fluffy, the toast golden brown, and she picked a small flower from the garden to put on the tray. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Winters snapped when she saw the flower. "We don't do that here." "But it's so pretty," Grace said softly. "It might make her smile." "Mrs. Sterling doesn't smile. Stop wasting time and take it up." Grace carried the tray up the stairs, her heart beating fast. When she reached the door, she knocked gently. Silence. She knocked again. "Mrs. Sterling, I have your breakfast." More silence. Grace slowly opened the door. The room was dark, the purple curtains closed. And there, by the window, sat a woman in a wheelchair with her back turned. Catherine didn't move. She had learned not to expect anything from servants. But then something strange happened. Grace didn't just put the tray down and leave. She walked over to the window and gently opened the curtains, letting sunlight pour into the room like liquid gold. Catherine blinked, surprised by the sudden brightness. "Good morning," Grace said with the warmest smile Catherine had seen in 2 years. "It's such a beautiful day. I thought you might want to see the sunshine." Catherine turned slowly in her wheelchair, and for the first time, she looked into Grace's eyes. And what she saw there made her heart skip a beat. Kindness. Real, genuine kindness. Grace placed the tray on Catherine's lap and pointed to the small flower. "I picked this for you. I hope you like yellow roses. They mean friendship." Catherine's lips trembled. Her eyes filled with tears. I... She couldn't finish. The tears came too fast, rolling down her cheeks like a river that had been held back for too long. Grace didn't run away. She didn't ignore the tears like everyone else did. Instead, she knelt down beside the wheelchair, took Catherine's hand in both of hers, and held it tight. "It's okay to cry," Grace whispered. "I'm here. You're not alone anymore." And in that moment, something cracked. The ice that had frozen Catherine's heart for 2 years began to melt. For the first time since the accident, someone saw her, really saw her, not as a broken woman in a wheelchair, but as a human being who needed love. Downstairs, 3 floors below, Mr. Sterling sat in his office counting money that would never make him happy. He had no idea that his entire world was about to change. All because of a maid with a kind heart and a yellow rose. Days turned into weeks, and something magical was happening on the 3rd floor of the Sterling mansion. Something nobody expected. Grace came to Catherine's room every morning with that same warm smile. She opened the curtains to let the sunshine in. She brought flowers from the garden, yellow roses, purple lilacs, red tulips. She didn't just place the breakfast tray and leave. She stayed. "How did you sleep, Mrs. Sterling?" Grace would ask. At first, Catherine didn't know how to answer. Nobody had asked her that question in 2 years. But slowly, word by word, she began to talk again. "I had a bad dream," Catherine whispered one morning. "Tell me about it," Grace said, sitting down beside her. Sometimes talking about bad dreams makes them smaller. So Catherine talked, and Grace listened, really listened, not with half an ear while thinking about other things. She listened with her whole heart. Grace brushed Catherine's hair gently, making it shine like silk. She helped her pick out pretty dresses instead of the plain nightgown she had been wearing. She read books to her in the afternoons, doing funny voices for characters that made Catherine laugh. Laugh! The sound was so strange in that quiet mansion, like a bird singing after a long, silent winter. "You have a beautiful laugh," Grace said, her eyes twinkling. "You should do it more often." "I forgot I could laugh," Catherine said, wiping happy tears from her eyes. But Grace did something even more important than making Catherine laugh. She helped her exercise. Every day, Grace would gently move Catherine's legs, bending them, stretching them, massaging them. The doctor said, "I'll never walk again," Catherine said sadly one afternoon as Grace worked on her legs. "Doctors are very smart," Grace replied, "but they don't know everything. Sometimes miracles happen when we don't give up. Do you really believe that?" Grace looked into Catherine's eyes with fire that couldn't be put out. "I believe that hope is more powerful than any medicine, and I believe in you." Those simple words planted a seed in Catherine's heart, a seed called hope. Meanwhile, downstairs, Mr. Sterling was beginning to notice something strange. He heard sounds he hadn't heard in years. Laughter floating down from the third floor, music playing, the sound of curtains being opened, letting light spill into the dark hallway. One day, he was walking past the staircase when he heard singing. Someone was singing an old song, sweet and gentle. He froze, his heart doing something odd in his chest. He knew that voice. It was Catherine. His wife was singing. Mr. Sterling's feet carried him up the stairs before his brain could stop them. He climbed slowly, quietly, following the sound. When he reached the third floor, he saw something that made him stop breathing. Through the crack in Catherine's open door, he saw Grace helping his wife stand. Catherine was holding on to a walker, her legs shaking, her face tight with effort, and Grace was beside her, one arm around her waist, supporting her. "That's it, Mrs. Sterling. Just one more step. You're doing it." Catherine moved her foot forward, just 1 inch, but it was 1 inch more than she had moved in 2 years. "I did it," Catherine gasped, tears of joy streaming down her face. "You did it." Grace laughed, and they hugged each other tight, crying and laughing at the same time. Mr. Sterling stood frozen in the hallway, his hand over his mouth. His eyes burned with tears. He hadn't cried since the accident. His wife was standing, fighting, living again, and it was all because of this maid. This woman he had never even met. This woman who had done what he couldn't do. She had brought his wife back from the darkness. Shame crashed over him like a giant wave. What kind of husband was he? What kind of man had he become? He backed away from the door quietly, his heart pounding. He went to his office and sat in his big leather chair, but for the first time in years, he couldn't think about business. All he could think about was a smile on Catherine's face, a smile he hadn't seen since before the accident. That night, Mr. Sterling couldn't sleep. He walked through the mansion in his pajamas, something he never did. The grandfather clock in the hall struck midnight. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Each second felt like it was counting all his mistakes. He found himself climbing the stairs to the third floor. He stood outside Catherine's room, his hand raised to knock. But he couldn't do it. He was too afraid. What would he say? How could he apologize for 2 years of silence? 2 years of running away? The door suddenly opened, and Grace stepped out, carrying an empty dinner tray. She jumped when she saw him standing there in the dark hallway. "Mr. Sterling," she gasped. "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were." "How is she?" The words burst out of him before he could stop them. Grace looked at him carefully. She saw something in his eyes that surprised her. Pain. Real, deep pain. "She's getting stronger every day, sir," Grace said softly. "Her body is healing." But what?" Grace took a deep breath. She knew she might get fired for what she was about to say, but she had to say it anyway. "Her body is healing, but her heart is still broken. She misses you, Mr. Sterling. She cries for you every night." The words hit him like arrows. Each one found its mark. "She cries for me?" His voice cracked. "Yes, sir. She thinks you don't love her anymore because of the wheelchair. She thinks she's a burden to you." "No." Mr. Sterling's voice came out louder than he meant it to. "No, that's not. I love her. I've always loved her." "Then why don't you tell her?" Grace asked simply. "Why don't you go in there right now and hold her hand and tell her?" Mr. Sterling looked at the door like it was a mountain he couldn't climb. "I can't. I'm the reason she's in that wheelchair. I was driving. I was on the phone. I wasn't paying attention. It's my fault she can't walk. And you think hiding from her makes it better? Grace's voice was gentle but firm. You think leaving her alone in the dark makes it better? Sir, she doesn't need you to fix her legs. She needs you to love her. That's all she's ever needed. Mr. Sterling's walls began to crumble. Tears ran down his face, and he didn't try to stop them. I don't know how. I've been cold for so long, I've forgotten how to be warm. Grace smiled sadly. Then learn again. It's never too late to remember how to love. She handed him the tray and walked past him down the hallway, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Mr. Sterling stood there for a long time. Finally, he knocked on the door. Soft, nervous. Come in, Catherine's voice called, probably thinking it was Grace. He opened the door slowly. The room was lit by a small lamp beside the bed. Catherine was sitting in her wheelchair, reading a book, when she looked up and saw him standing there. Her book fell from her hands. "Richard," she whispered, like she was seeing a ghost. He stepped into the room. "Hello, Catherine." They stared at each other across a space that felt like an ocean. 2 years of silence stood between them like a wall. He started, then stopped. His throat felt tight. I wanted to. It's okay, Catherine said quietly, though her hands were shaking. You don't have to stay if you don't want to. No, he said quickly. I mean, I do want to stay. I don't know what to say. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. You could start with the truth. Do you hate me, Richard? Is that why you stopped coming? Hate you? His heart shattered into a million pieces. He rushed across the room and fell to his knees beside her wheelchair, taking her hands in his. Catherine, I could never hate you. Never. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Then why? The tears spilled over. Why did you leave me alone? Why did you stop looking at me? Because I'm a coward, he said, his voice breaking. Because every time I look at you, I see my mistake. I see the accident. I see what I did to you, and I can't forgive myself. Catherine reached out with a trembling hand and touched his face. Richard, I forgave you 2 years ago. The accident wasn't your fault. But you leaving me? That hurt worse than any broken bone. You took away the one thing I needed most. They held each other and cried. Years of pain and loneliness poured out in that dark room. And slowly, very slowly, the ice around Mr. Sterling's heart began to melt. I'm so sorry, he whispered over and over. I'm so sorry. I know, Catherine said, holding him tight. I know. They talked until the sun started to rise. They talked about the accident, about their fears, about the lonely years. Mr. Sterling told her about the business deals that meant nothing. Catherine told him about the days staring out the window, wishing he would come. Grace helped me remember how to hope, Catherine said. She's an angel, Richard. We have to keep her. We have to make sure she never leaves. I will, Mr. Sterling promised. I'll give her anything she wants. But neither of them knew that Grace had her own secret, a secret that would soon shake everything again. The next morning, Mr. Sterling didn't go to his office. For the first time in years, he had breakfast with his wife. He pushed her wheelchair to the dining room himself, and they ate together, talking and laughing like they used to. The servants couldn't believe their eyes. Mr. Sterling was smiling. Mrs. Sterling was glowing. What magic had happened? Grace watched from the doorway, her heart full of joy, but there was also sadness in her eyes. A sadness she hid behind her smile, because Grace had received a phone call last night. Her mother's sickness had gotten worse, much worse. The doctor said she only had a few weeks left. Grace needed to go home. But how could she leave now? How could she leave Catherine, who was just starting to heal? How could she leave this family that was just starting to find each other again? Grace went to the garden and sat on a bench, her head in her hands. She prayed for an answer. She prayed for a miracle. She didn't know that Mr. Sterling had followed her, that he had seen the tears on her face, that he was about to discover the truth about the woman who had saved his family. Grace, he called softly. She quickly wiped her eyes and stood up. Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry, I was just... What's wrong? He asked. And for the first time, he asked not as a boss, but as a friend, "Please tell me." Grace looked into his eyes and saw the same kindness she had given to Catherine, and she knew she could trust him. "It's my mother," she said, her voice breaking. "She's dying." Grace stood in the garden, tears streaming down her face as she told Mr. Sterling about her mother. "She raised me all by herself," Grace said, her voice shaking. "My father left when I was little. She worked 3 jobs to send me to school. She never complained, never gave up. And now she's sick, and I'm not there. I'm here, and she's dying alone." Mr. Sterling felt like someone had punched him in the chest. Here was this woman who had saved his family, who had brought light back into his dark mansion, and she was suffering. Her own family needed her. "How long have you known?" he asked gently. 3 weeks, Grace whispered. "I kept working because I needed the money for her medicine. But the doctor called last night. He said I should come home soon if I want to say goodbye." "Then you must go," Mr. Sterling said immediately. "Right now. Today." "But Mrs. Sterling will understand completely. Grace, you gave us back our life. You taught me how to love again. Now it's my turn to help you." Grace looked up at him, confused. "I don't understand." Mr. Sterling pulled out his phone. "What's your mother's name? Where is she?" "Her name is Mary Johnson. She's at County Hospital in Riverside." "But, sir, I can't afford." "You're not paying for anything," Mr. Sterling interrupted. "I am. Give me 10 minutes. He made 4 phone calls right there in the garden. First, to the hospital. Second, to the best heart doctor in the country. Third, to his lawyer. Fourth, to his pilot. When he hung up, he turned to Grace with a smile. "Pack your things. My private jet will take you to Riverside in 2 hours. The best doctors are being flown in to treat your mother. All expenses paid. And you're not fired. You're on paid leave for as long as you need." Grace couldn't speak. She just stared at him with her mouth open, tears pouring down her face. "But why? Why would you do this for me?" Mr. Sterling took her hands in his, just like she had done for Catherine so many times. "Because you showed me that real wealth isn't money. It's love. It's kindness. It's being there for the people who need you. You gave me everything that matters. Let me give you this." Grace threw her arms around him and sobbed. "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If you're loving the story of hope and transformation, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe so you never miss stories that touch the heart. Let's spread kindness together." 2 hours later, Grace stood in Catherine's room, holding her hand. "You have to go," Catherine said firmly, even though tears were running down her cheeks. "Your mother needs you." "But you need me too," Grace said. "You're just starting to walk again." Catherine squeezed her hand tight. "Grace, you taught me something more important than walking. You taught me that I'm strong, that I'm not broken, that I'm loved. I can keep going now because of you. But your mother only has one daughter. Go to her. Be with her." They hugged for a long time, both of them crying. "I'll come back," Grace promised, "as soon as I can." "I'll be here," Catherine said, "maybe even standing on my own 2 feet." Grace smiled through her tears. "I believe you will be." Mr. Sterling drove Grace to the airport himself. As they rode in his fancy car, he said something that surprised her. "Grace, I've been thinking, when you come back, if you want to come back, I want you to be more than a maid. I want you to be the director of a new program I'm starting, a program to help families like yours, families who can't afford medical care. Would you do that?" Grace's eyes went wide. "Me? But I'm just—" "You're not just anything," Mr. Sterling said. "You're the woman who saved my family. You're the woman who taught a billionaire that money means nothing without love. You're exactly who I need." Grace couldn't stop smiling. Yes, I'll do it, when I come back." "When you come back," he agreed. When Grace arrived at County Hospital, she ran through the doors and up to the 3rd floor. Room 307. She burst through the door. "Mama!" Her mother lay in the bed, small and weak, tubes in her arms. But when she heard Grace's voice, her eyes opened, and she smiled. "My baby girl," Mary whispered. "You came." Grace ran to the bed and took her mother's hand. "Of course I came, Mama. I'll always come when you need me. But your job—" "My job is here right now, with you." For the next 2 weeks, Grace never left her mother's side. She slept in a chair next to the bed. She held her mother's hand through the pain. She prayed when the doctor said there was no hope. And then something amazing happened. The specialist that Mr. Sterling had flown and discovered something the other doctors had missed. Mary's heart problem could be fixed with surgery. It was risky, but there was a chance. "Do it," Mary said. "I'm not ready to leave my daughter yet." The surgery took 6 hours. Grace paced in the waiting room, praying harder than she had ever prayed in her life. Mr. Sterling called 3 times to check on them. Catherine called twice, crying and praying on the phone with Grace. Finally, the doctor came out. He was smiling. "The surgery was successful," he said. "Your mother is going to be fine." Grace collapsed into a chair, sobbing with relief and joy. Her mother was going to live. God had answered her prayers. Mary recovered slowly but surely. 3 weeks later, she was strong enough to go home. Grace took care of her in their small apartment, cooking her favorite foods, making sure she took her medicine, telling her stories about the mansion and the Sterling family. "They sound like good people," Mary said one evening. "They are now," Grace said. "They just forgot for a while. But they remembered." "Just like you helped them remember," Mary said, touching Grace's cheek. "You have a gift, my daughter. You see the good in people when they can't see it themselves." 1 month after Grace had left, she received a video call from the mansion. When she answered, she saw Catherine on the screen. But Catherine wasn't in her wheelchair. Catherine was standing, walking, moving across the room on her own 2 feet. "Grace, look, I'm walking." Catherine laughed, tears of joy streaming down her face. Grace screamed with excitement, jumping up and down in her apartment. "You did it! You did it!" "We did it," Catherine said. "You planted the seed of hope. I just kept watering it." Mr. Sterling appeared on the screen, his arm around his wife. "Grace, we miss you. The mansion isn't the same without you. When are you coming home?" "Home." He called it home. "Soon," Grace said, wiping happy tears from her eyes. "Mama is almost completely better. Maybe 2 more weeks." "We'll be waiting," Mr. Sterling said. "And Grace, I meant what I said. When you come back, things are going to be different, better. We're going to change lives together." If this story is touching your heart, imagine how many others need to hear it too. Share this message of hope and subscribe to keep these powerful stories coming. Together, we can remind the world that kindness changes everything. 2 weeks later, Grace returned to the Sterling mansion, but she almost didn't recognize it. The cold, dark place she had left was gone. Now flowers bloomed in every room. Music played in the halls. Servants laughed and talked instead of walking around like scared shadows. The mansion had come alive. Catherine met her at the door, walking without any help, and hugged her tight. "Welcome home, Grace," she whispered. That evening, Mr. Sterling made an announcement at dinner. Grace, Catherine, and all the servants were gathered around the huge dining table. For the first time, everyone ate together like a family. "I have something to tell you all," Mr. Sterling said, standing up. "For too many years, I believed that money was the most important thing in life. I built an empire, but I lost my heart. I had everything, but I had nothing." He looked at Grace. "And then this woman walked into our home with holes in her shoes and a flower in her hand. She showed us what real wealth looks like. It looks like kindness. It looks like courage. It looks like love." Everyone was quiet, listening. So today, I'm announcing the creation of the Grace Center for Hope. It will be a place where families who can't afford medical care can get help, where people who are forgotten can be seen, where love is the most valuable currency. Grace's hands flew to her mouth. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "And Grace," Mr. Sterling continued, "I want you to run it. You'll have all the resources you need, all the support you need, Because if you can save one broken family, ours, imagine how many more you can save. Grace stood up, tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Catherine said, smiling. Say yes, all the servants said together. Grace looked around the table at all these faces, faces that were smiling, hopeful, alive. She thought about her mother, healthy and happy back home. She thought about Catherine, walking again. She thought about Mr. Sterling, who had remembered how to love, all because she had refused to look away from pain. All because she had offered kindness when no one else would. Yes, Grace said, her voice strong and clear. Yes, I'll do it. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Over the next year, the Grace Center for Hope opened its doors. It helped hundreds of families. Sick mothers got treatment. Disabled children got therapy. Lonely people found community. And every single person who walked through those doors was treated with the same kindness that Grace had shown to Catherine. Mr. Sterling and Catherine volunteered there every week. They served food, held hands, listened to stories. They learned every name. They dried every tear. They had become the kind of rich people who gave away their wealth but kept getting richer. Rich in love, in friendship, in purpose. The mansion was never cold again. It became a place where people gathered, where parties celebrated life, where laughter echoed through halls that had been silent for too long. Grace's mother, Mary, recovered completely and came to live in a small cottage on the mansion grounds. Every morning, she and Catherine would have tea together. Two mothers would learn that the greatest gift you can give your children is teaching them how to love. Grace's little brother got to go to college. He became a doctor and worked at the Grace Center, helping people just like his sister did. And Grace? She kept doing what she had always done. She saw people who were invisible. She loved people who felt unlovable. She brought light to dark places. One evening, 5 years after she had first arrived at the mansion with holes in her shoes, Grace stood in the garden where she had once cried. But now she was smiling. Catherine and Mr. Sterling walked up behind her. What are you thinking about? Catherine asked. I'm thinking about that first day. Grace said, when I brought you a yellow rose. I was so scared. I didn't know if I could make a difference. You didn't just make a difference, Mr. Sterling said. You changed everything. No, Grace said, shaking her head. We changed everything. Together. Because that's what love does. It doesn't work alone. It spreads from heart to heart to heart, like light spreading through darkness. Catherine took Grace's hand. Mr. Sterling took the other one. They stood together in the garden as the sun set, painting the sky gold and pink and purple. 3 people who had once been lost, now found. 3 hearts that had once been broken, now healed. 3 souls that had learned the greatest truth of all, that the richest life isn't the one with the most money, it's the one with the most love. And they lived that truth every single day for the rest of their lives. The mansion on the hill no longer stood cold and alone. Now it glowed warm and bright, like a lighthouse guiding people home. All because one woman had walked through its doors with kind heart and refused to give up on love. If the story moved you, please share it with everyone you know. Subscribe so you never miss these powerful stories that remind us what really matters. Drop a comment below telling us, what act of kindness changed your life? Let's inspire each other to be more like Grace. Together, we can make the world a warmer place, one kind act at a time. Share and subscribe now. Remember, you don't need to be rich to be wealthy. You just need to be kind.